Hello and welcome to our podcast named Detours. This podcast embraces the unexpected twists and turns that shapes the journeys of our lives that God sends us down. I'm your host and fellow traveler, Mike. I'm here with my beautiful wife, Deb, and we invite you to join us on this exploration of uncharted territories we encounter along the way. So without further ado, let's dive into this episode. Welcome, Detours travelers. I am Mike. I am your host, and I am here with my beautiful additional host named Deb.
Hi, guys.
And we are here continuing on in season 1. This is episode number 8. This is our last episode of this particular season. And episode 7 left on a bit of a dreary note. At least it was from our shoes, Deb, for you and I.
Yeah, it was the breakup.
It was the breakup, the moment every man or every woman out there dreads, the breakup. But there is good news. God wasn't done.
Thank God.
Thank God is right. You know, and so here we are, and we're looking back years later at the story that the detours, there's so many detours to our story.
Do you think we're going to get this all done in one episode?
I think we can do this. Yes.
Okay.
I think we can do this. So just kind of recapping the last episode, we talked about, we were together maybe roughly 6 months during our first go around, if you will. Everything was going well. We were going to church together. We were going to Bible studies together. We went on very short-term mission trips, just like day mission trips, things like that when hurricanes hit, so on and so forth.
Yeah, we had fun.
Yeah, we had a good, solid relationship. And you were going through the program Trees of Hope at the time, towards the end of our first go-around again, if you will. Trees of Hope is a program designed for survivors of sexual abuse. You had actually already taken it and completed it once, and you were taking it a second time, right?
Yes, I was encouraged to just go and do another round, so I did.
And so we're dating, and you decide to go back to Trees of Hope for a second time. And by dating, it kind of opened you up to, I guess, vulnerabilities that weren't necessarily there the first time you went through it, because now you're with a man.
True.
And so things go awry and you leave.
I do.
Again, I'll remind everyone out there, you left right before Valentine's Day. So I'm sitting there in the dust.
You're never going to let me live that down, are you?
Never, ever, ever. And not so coincidentally, right after we break up, you have a one-on-one meeting with the guy that was our mentor. We did Bible study at his house. To this day, he's a very dear friend, Pastor Bill, and his wife, Diana. But you have a one-on-one meeting with him that you had scheduled, and I think you had some biblical questions and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
That obviously was, again, God's timing. So what happens? You show up for your meeting and take it from there.
Well, I show up and I have, of course, questions that I know Bill can answer about the Bible. And then we wind up dialoguing about you. And he, of course, wants to know what happened. And I try to explain, I think it's best that I let this go. I don't know, maybe God was right. I'm not ready. And then I tell him why I'm not ready, and I tell him about my story of sexual abuse, and it was really the first man I had told other than you. And I couldn't get through the story without crying and really, I think I was shaking. I think that
I remember him telling me you were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? He was so gracious, and he listened, and, I had a list of pros and cons about why I should stay and why I should go, and he graciously listened to each one of them. He did not really comment to any of them. He just kind of listened, and I think that's kind of what I needed. And, he told me to obviously go back into the Word and spend some time with Jesus. And that's really what I wound up doing. And then I think we met a couple of times, in that 18-month period that we were apart. And I never brought you up, but he would always go, and Mike's doing okay. I think he.
I was slipping him some money under the table to give me any updates.
He was good. He was trying not to get involved too much, at least from my perspective. But he was a good friend, and he was someone I knew I could trust. So, yeah, I sought some counsel from him, and you sought some counsel.
Yeah, so after you met with Pastor Bill, I needed to meet with him because I needed to ask him what is going on here. Why would someone just kind of pick up and leave so abruptly out of what I felt was a solid, happy relationship, as solid and as happy as you can be in 6 months into a relationship.
Sure.
I turned to him and I said, Pastor Bill, after you meet with Deb, I'd love to just come meet with you and have you fill me in. And it wasn't a fill me in on like gossipy kind of way, but just what Bill do I do? Is this something where I approach her to have a conversation, to say that I'm fighting for her? Is this what is going on? And so I do. I end up meeting with him, and immediately he tells me, Mike, she is in no way ready to be in a relationship. And he, of course, tells me about how you opened up to him and how you were shaking. And he said, I deal with this. He's a teacher. He's an 11th grade teacher at Calvary's Academy there, CCA. And he deals with 11th graders, and he just becomes such a mentor to so many kids that they come to him with all sorts of things. And he's very much used to stories of abuse, and he's just such a wise man when it comes to these things. And he told me, he said, Mike, if Deb is going to get healing from this, it's going to take her a minimum of a year to get healing. And so I said, okay, it's going to take her a minimum of a year. Then the least I can do, if this is supposed to be my wife, the least I can do is fast and pray for her. And so I decided to give up the internet. That was my fasting. And I work in digital. Calvary Chapel's website. I'm the one that kind of runs that website and all their emails and so on and so forth. So if it was work related, of course, I had no problem jumping on the computer, doing what I needed to do.
But
that's my career.
No social media, no video games.
Shut down every aspect of online that I could think of in my personal life, and entered into that season. But again, God was very clear. Do not reach out to her. Do not talk to her. You got to let me do this. It's got to be my way.
What did you think when you heard a year? Like, did you flinch? Did you go, how am I going to do a year?
I'm definitely a processor, right? So when Bill says it, I go, okay, no problem. And I think honestly at the beginning, I was okay. It was when, and I don't want to fast forward too far, but when I start nearing that 1 year mark where I start to doubt what God had told me, and I go, God, did you really say that? Or was it all the dopamine because I was in love that was going to my brain and I want to be with this woman? And so I'm manifesting this, God told me we were going to be together. I really started to have those doubts because that's a very real, dopamine is a real thing.
Oh, yeah.
And it can cause you to not listen to God. And so that came a little bit later, but at the year mark, that year, during that year, for the most part, I was pretty decent. Wasn't doubting a ton. And like I said, until about the 1 year mark.
And you were praying for me in this time?
Yeah. That you would get the healing that you needed. And because of the 6 months that we had together, I knew how hard you were pursuing healing anyway. That's what really helped me too. It wasn't hearing from God. helped me for sure.
Right.
And then knowing you as well as I did helped me, because I knew I began to understand the character of God, and I understood the character that you had. And you were chasing, the reason you were in Trees of Hope to begin with was healing. And you were taking it for a second time.
Yes.
And you had just gone through life skills, which was 30 weeks plus, something like that, right? So I knew you were pursuing healing. And so that I held my hope with Deb's going to pursue healing. She loves Jesus. He's going to meet her where she is. And you're going to get the healing that you needed for us to have a happy, healthy relationship.
Yeah, and he did meet me.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine. So what was different the second time through Trees of Hope?
Well, once you know what to expect from the curriculum, like you can brace for impact, I guess. I think the first time through, everything is kind of like wow, this is hard stuff to process. And I think you touch the surface of the things that have wounded you. But the second time you do it, you start to process through those particular events with much more detail, with much more, for me, honesty with God. Like, I am resentful, I'm angry, I'm all these things that are holding me back from truly being whole in you. And, the first time you go through it, you're just kind of processing out loud to other people who have experienced things that you've experienced. The second time was a lot deeper for me. And so that's the process I was in with Jesus.
And that's about a 3-month course, Trees of Hope?
13 weeks.
Okay. Yeah. So basically 3 months. And that's something too, I think a lot of people get a little bit of help, but if you don't see it through to completion, to have the idea that you can take one class of 13 weeks and be completely healed is
you're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, like it is. Roll your sleeves up, get your hands dirty, and this is all kinds of healing. Sexual abuse healing has got to be some of the deepest, darkest healing that's out there. So for you, you went through it twice, and then you became, what was it, like almost a moderator position in Trees of Hope? You weren't the actual teacher?
No, I was like a co-facilitator of a group, because I felt so moved by the experience that I wanted to be able to help other people walk through it.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, you're actually going to be on Nicole, the who runs Trees of Hope. You're going to be on her podcast coming up here. What is it, next month?
I think so, yeah.
In September?
No, I'm sorry, October.
October, okay.
Yeah, and that podcast is called Not Just a Hashtag.
Gotcha, okay. So we'll look for, do you know the date and time or anything like that yet?
No, it's tentative as of now, but
we'll let everyone know.
Yeah.
So you're going through Trees of Hope. You get out of Trees of Hope the second time. What happens at that? What are you feeling as you graduate, if you will, from Trees of Hope the second time? Are you looking, going, the healing still needs to continue, but I'm in a good enough place that I believe I can handle this between Jesus and I?
Yeah, I felt renewed in my heart that God was with me the whole time, and he wasn't going to leave me as I move forward in life, and that I felt a freedom that I hadn't felt before, a freedom to just show up as I was and not to walk in shame. There's a lot of shame that happens in abuse. And I felt like God had lifted a lot of that for me. All of it, really. I mean, there are times I still struggle with shame because, that's deeply ingrained. But after that program, the second time, I really felt like, I was ready to conquer life. And like most survivors, we put things in silos in our brain, and you were put in a little silo in my brain, and I just didn't think about you. I'm sorry to say.
Hey.
And thank God that is a survival technique, because if you were part of my thought process while I was pursuing this, you would have only been a distraction for me. I really.
God was spot on when he told me to leave you alone. He said, don't call, don't text. I don't want you doing anything.
Yeah, and you didn't. And so that was good.
That was hard. Let me tell you.
Was
that
it?
That was so hard. Absolutely.
You wanted to be the fixer and call me up and say what?
I don't even, I mean, I don't know at this point. We're 5 years removed from it, but it was, I did love you. I did care deeply for you, and everything ended so abruptly. And it was just like, I didn't get the chance to say my piece.
Yeah.
So for me, it was just this, a lot of unspoken, but that's...
I never really thought about how uncomfortable that must have been to not be able to say your piece.
Yeah, I definitely
sorry.
felt like, oh my goodness, are you kidding? I certainly said it and then some by now, but so you get out of Trees of Hope, and then you're actually presented with a very cool opportunity. How far out of Trees of Hope are you when you get presented with this?
I get presented with an opportunity to be a part of a really incredible book. And I would say that was maybe 6 months after I leave Trees of Hope. And during the time that I spent in Trees of Hope, I did a lot of journaling, and God really brought to life this drive to write so that I could process. I kind of liked writing as a kid, but I would have never considered myself a writer. But I had written out my story of my rape in my 20s as I was going through Trees of Hope. And so I had this unique opportunity that came up, and I'm like, okay. I had a friend who was always involved in some kind of cool, either non-for-profit, or she was doing some sort of like leadership program. She really was very well versed in just growing in her walk. And we had already done a program together that I'll tell you about a little bit later because it's part of the story, but we had already gone through a program, so we were fairly close. And she says, hey, I'm having a bunch of ladies come over, and we're doing a roundtable discussion about ministry. And, she happened to call on a day where I was exhausted. I'm like, I don't want to, I'm not coming, no. And she's like, no, you're coming. And I'm like, no. And she's, another Italian woman, very persistent. And I like to say I was volunforced. I'm volunteering you to come, and you are coming whether you like it or not. And
we all know what that's like. Yes, I've been volunforced. Yes.
Oh gosh. So she says, hey, you're coming. I'm not taking no for an answer. So I show up, and there's all these incredible women, probably about 20 of us sitting around, and we've got cake and coffee, and we're chatting, and everyone goes around in a circle and dialogues about their life and their ministries and their passions. And there's two women that are sitting next to one another, and they are partners in a really cool non-for-profit that helps women that have come out of human trafficking, finds them homes, helps to rehabilitate them, introduces them to Jesus. And I was just fascinated by their story. I mean, they were just really launching this ministry through book publishing. And so that was even more interesting to me. So when the meeting is over, everyone kind of sits around and talks. And I went up to one of the ladies, and she was talking at her time frame, like, hey, everybody's got a story to tell. And, you could tell your story in a book, and we can publish it, and so on and so forth. And I don't know. I just went up to her and I go, boy, do I have a story. And she goes, you do? And I said, yeah, I mean, I got a lot of stories. And we kind of chatted and laughed, and she said, well, why don't we go to lunch? And I said, okay. So we go to lunch together. I bring my story, and it's very raw. It's like a journal entry at this point. And we have a great meal, and she reads the story, and she goes, oh my goodness. I think this would be a great addition to our book.
Tell the audience. You really glazed over it. You just kind of said, "Am I rape in my 20s?" Give us the 1 minute version. That's definitely at least a show, if not a season in and of itself.
Yeah,
but at least fill the audience in what exactly happened, just real quick.
I don't know how quick I can be. I'm in my early 20s. I'm working in an industry where I am in an office space, and I wind up meeting somebody, and we go out on like one date. So I know the guy. It's not as if he's some stranger in an alley. And he goes, I'd like to come by the office and have lunch with you. And I thought, oh, okay, that's nice. He goes, the third floor of your office space is vacant. We could just go up there, hang out, and talk. So he obviously scoped out the space prior to, and I didn't know we could go up there and talk meant I was going to get raped. Maybe I'm naive, but that's not where my heart was. I didn't expect that. And within minutes of getting to the third floor, I was pushed up against a wall, and that's how it happened. And, I went back to work. I was just like so shocked. I was numb, and I didn't say anything for 20 years. I went back to work like nothing happened. Sadly, that I think there are so many people that have that same response. There's 3 responses that you talk about, and we'll get into it at a different time, but it's fight, flight or freeze. And I don't think freeze is something that's talked about a lot. I think we talk a lot about fight and flight, but freeze is a real thing. And I froze. And so much so that you literally just went right back to work, didn't tell anyone what had just happened. Not a soul.
Shoved it down for 20 years, and then Trees of Hope happens. And so, again, bringing us back to the current part of the story, you're at lunch with someone who's reading your journal entry that's recounting all of this.
Right.
And what does she say when she's done reading it?
She says, wow, this is a story people need to hear. I'm sorry this happened to you. I think this would be an addition to this book that people can really get something from. And then she proceeded to tell me, it's a self-publishing opportunity, and it cost X amount of dollars, and those dollars go to the foundation. And I think it was a great opportunity and a great foundation, but I didn't have that kind of money.
Sure.
And I said to her, I thank you so much for even having lunch with me, but I don't have that kind of money. I'll tell you this, if God wants me in this book, God's going to put me in this book. And she just kind of looked at me like, okay, well, we do have scholarship opportunities. Maybe I can present this story to our board of directors. And if we have a space, who knows, maybe God will put you in this book. And lo and behold, God put me in the book. I did not pay for the self-publish. I was given a scholarship to tell my story. And I was put in a book called Unstoppable with amazing people who have stories of resilience and perseverance through their own detours, really.
That was another book of detours. It's almost like a chicken soup for the soul.
Yes.
A lot of different worldviews. Wasn't a Christian book.
No.
Not necessarily. There were a lot of Christians in there with Christian stories. Yours is, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But as a matter of fact, on your website, debmarsalisi.com, there's a little link there if people want to go online and purchase the book. All the proceeds go to, the organization, when they print books and things like that, I believe. So people can support that way. But so let's continue on with the story.
Okay, so I get this opportunity to write. I write. It gets published. It's very exciting. Simultaneously, I'm on a mission to grow. So I go with the woman who's volunteered me to this meeting. Her and I go to a leadership conference in Colorado. And that program was called Heart of a Samurai. And I think that's a funny title because I date you and you're into Japanese drumming. And it was like the first time I was like, oh, gosh, I thought of you instantly because how many people are into Japanese drumming? And it was the Heart of the Samurai was the name of the leadership conference.
Yeah, and for everyone out there, I was Japanese drumming. It's called taiko, and I play with a group in Fort Lauderdale, and the score that our sensei wrote was literally the life and death of a samurai. So we spent tremendous amounts of time learning about samurai, Bushido code, all sorts of things. It was very, very enlightening because I had never studied anything like that, and so I absolutely loved it. It was my passion. I still love playing. I still have drums out in the garage. We literally had 3 of the members from the group over just today. So yeah, when we were dating the first time, you were probably looking at me like I was, a green bug or something when I was in my drumming group.
I thought it was a little over the top, but I don't think I understood how much you felt connected to God through that time of meditation and drumming. And so,
drumming, music for me, I've always been a musician, played the piano as a concert pianist for 13 years, stepped away from music when I was in college and came back and found drumming. And yeah, drumming absolutely became my worship for Jesus. I would sit and do Bible studies or pray or whatever it was, and then I would just go drum, and I would meditate on whatever I had read, whatever I had heard, whatever was on my heart, and it became my lifeline. There were 2 lifelines for me. One was the drum, and the other was the beach, where I would, that I had my best time with God behind the drum or over at the beach. And I would talk to you about it, and you like a good girlfriend, you would sit there and listen to me be all excited about samurais and so on and so forth. And And so, yeah, you definitely knew that I was into samurais. And so what a strange topic for a convention. And you're
it's
out.
Wild.
And so what's incredible about this is I don't know exactly when this lines up, but the convention lines up somewhere around the 1-year mark.
Okay.
So you tell your side first, and then I'll tell mine.
Okay.
So you're out in Denver, right?
I'm out in Colorado. I don't know that it was Denver. And
this is where the convention is.
This is where the convention is, and we're going through a week-long using the principles of a samurai and so on. And so as the course is ending, they sell books about their literature, and The Heart of the Samurai was written by David Clemmer or Brian Clemmer.
Yeah.
Brian Clemmer. And I clearly hear God say, buy this book for Mike. And I think, I haven't talked to him in a year, God. Like, yes, he'd probably like the book, but you want me to buy this guy a book? And
was this like an audible voice?
No, this was an internal, like, unmistakably, like, it had to be God, because I wasn't really thinking about you other than the title was like a samurai, and I thought, oh, wow, that's kind of ironic. But, like, it wasn't like you were on my mind for that week. I was just looking to grow, and the topic happened to be samurai. So I know that wasn't my thought. It's not like I conjured that up in my spirit, buy a book for a guy I dumped a year ago. So I was like, I didn't know what to do with that. And I am embarrassed in this podcast that I have to admit, I definitely have delayed obedience and I need to work on that, but I didn't buy the book. And then I get home and, like a patient father, God presses on my heart, buy the book for Mike. So I go, okay. I get on Amazon and I purchase the book. And I want to give you this book somehow.
Yeah, so the reason I knew it was a year was, again, Bill tells me, Mike, it takes a minimum of a year for someone to heal from something like this, and that's when they're working hard, they're pressing hard into Jesus. It's going to take her a minimum of a year. So Florida has or Fort Lauderdale has the Florida Renaissance Fair, and it's every February and March. So when you break up with me on the weekends, I'm a drummer and I'm performing at the Florida Renaissance Fair. And anyone that's a musician that does performances, it's a lot of waiting around. You go on stage and you do a 20 to 30 minute performance, and then you're off for a couple of hours. And then you come back in another 20, 30 minutes, and then you're off for a couple of hours. And the mornings and the evenings are very, very slow as you're waiting for everything to happen, lighting and sound and so on. So I just had tremendous amounts of time on my hand. And so I said, God, I'm going to be praying. And so the year comes up, and sure enough, Florida Renaissance Fair comes around. It's 7 weeks long. So it's almost 50 days.
Wow.
From 7 weeks. So it would be 7 times 7, 49, plus the additional days, 50 days. So it was 50 days. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sitting there going, okay, God, Florida Renaissance Fair was last year's cue, which means I'm at the Florida Renaissance Fair. It's been a year. It's time for you and I to really talk about this again. And I said, okay, God, Bill told me it was, and Bill is a neutral person. Bill wants what's best for Deb. Bill wants what's best for Mike. And Bill wanted Jesus to get the glory. Mm-hmm. And so I said, God, you put Bill in my life, and I trust what Bill told me as far as healing, that it would take a while. And then he's a neutral party, and he said it would take a minimum of a year. That was what he told me. He didn't tell me it would take a year. He said it would take a minimum of a year.
Okay.
And I went to God. Florida Renaissance Fair rolls around the next year, and I said, okay, God, I got 50 days. I'm going to be praying every minute of off time on Saturdays and Sundays during this Florida Renaissance Fair. You and I are going to have conversation because I need to know what's going on. And
what are you praying? Like for my healing, for us to get back together, for answers?
I said, God, Bill said a minimum of a year. Number one, I'm not the type of person to do the minimum.
You're definitely not.
Do you need more time? What I said, I really kind of approached God and said, God, whatever your answer is, I'm okay with, including, Mike, I want you to let her go because you're not meant to be with one another. I was completely okay with that answer. Yes, I would have been upset. Yes, I would have been sad, but yes, I would have absolutely obeyed. And so I approached God and I said, okay, God, this is the year, which is the minimum. Bill told me it was the minimum. And I've given you the minimum. And I said, you don't owe me anything, God. You already gave me everything through salvation. But I'd really love to know whether or not this is still alive. This opportunity, is this still a thing? That is a possibility, because I'm coming up on 40 and I did want to be a husband, and I was just sitting there going, God, I've given you and her a year, and I haven't bickered, I haven't complained. And
God bless you.
And if I'm not supposed to hold on anymore, please just tell me so I can let go and I can move on. If this is still a legitimate thing and you're still at work, would you please just give me a sign? And I'm sitting there fasting and praying on the weekends. God, would you please just give me a sign? And while I'm praying those prayers, he's sending you to Denver to the Samurai Convention, we'll call it.
Goodness.
So what happens? Your delayed obedience, as you kind of joked.
Yes, I get the book off Amazon, and now I have to figure out, I guess I have to give it to you. So I pray, like, how do you want me to do this? Should I call? Should I text? I don't hear anything from God. So I figured probably texting would be the most neutral. And I shoot you a text that I went to a leadership conference called the Heart of the Samurai. And The book was wonderful, and I think that you'd be blessed, and I'd like to be able to give it to you. Would you like to go for coffee?
And I think actually the name of isn't the name of the book The Compassionate Samurai?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
not
it
the hardest.
is.
Yeah, in case anyone's looking for Clemmer's book, it's the Compassionate Samurai.
We could put that in the show notes if you want. Yeah.
Yeah, we can try and do that. Yeah, so this is now when I get the text message from you saying you have a book, we're roughly 14 months after we've broken up, and I've heard nothing but crickets. But the last roughly 2 months, I've been at the Florida Renaissance Fair fasting and praying, going, God, is this still alive? But at the end of the Florida Renaissance Fair, if I have not heard anything, I'm going to take
That's my sign to move on.
It's my time to move on. And I don't remember the exact timing, but I don't remember if it was right before the last day or if it was right after. But I get just a completely random text message from you going, hey, would you like to go to Starbucks? I have a book for you.
Yes.
And I go, okay, God, you're still at work here.
You must have been like amazed at God.
There were several jaw on the floor moments, and that was definitely one of them.
Yeah, I would think so.
Because at that, like, again, what I was referencing earlier is leading up to, right around the turn of the year, right before Valentine's Day, that's when the doubt really started to get heavy.
Like, did you really say this,
Yes.
God?
Did I make this up in my brain? Was this something I just wanted to be with this girl and I made it up because she's pretty and funny and all of these things? And the doubt definitely was creeping in. So when I got that text message from you, I was definitely jaw was on the floor going, okay, God, you're absolutely at work here. But I did not get from God that you were healed and it's time
to move forward.
It was just, this is a step. You asked for evidence. You're getting your evidence.
That is so gracious of God. He doesn't owe us anything.
No, he did not owe. And that's where I know part of the reason why he gave me that evidence is because of, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here, but where my heart was during the prayer asking for it. It wasn't oh, God, I've spent a year fasting and praying. You owe me an answer.
Right.
It wasn't. It was simply, Dad, if you need me to hold on, please just tell me. And I'm okay with you saying let go. I'm okay with holding on. I've just been holding on for a long time. And I don't want to sit here with pie on my face 3 years from now if this was never supposed to be because dopamine, or whatever it was. So it was really a very, very genuine, honest request. And luckily he answered. And so, I immediately, we decided we're going to meet up at Starbucks. I don't remember. It's just a few days later we were going to meet up at Starbucks.
That was the Starbucks we had prayed many a times before, many great conversations over coffee when we were dating. So I thought that would be a good place.
Yeah. And so leading into it.
I was totally nervous. I'm like, what is this going to be like? Is he going to, ask me why I broke up with him? Is he going to be like, what is he going to be like? I don't know if I can do this.
And I'm sitting there going, I'm about to go out with my future wife, and I haven't seen her in 14 months. That's what's going through my head. So... But again, God really, it was inescapably clear when he said, don't you poke, don't you anything the situation because you're just going to make it worse. So I really didn't have any, I prayed certainly very hard for the several days leading up to it going, God, what do you need from me? What am I supposed to be doing at this? And the only thing that I could think of was just peace, is I needed you to be at peace with where you and I were. I needed you to just leave that coffee shop at complete peace. There was no threat of any kind from me.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I could come up with.
Well, it was accomplished because I was very nervous. You were there early, which is a great trait. You were sitting there, and I sat down, and it was just immediately a sense of like calm. You just had this beautiful smile on your face, and it was just, hi, Deb. And we talked, and it was remarkably just easy flowing conversation. And I wind up telling you that I have this opportunity for a book, and I'm super excited because you were the first person that ever read that story.
Yeah, I remember reading that.
Yeah, that was probably...
That was nerve-wracking for you as well, I'm sure.
Yes, it really was.
Giving that to me, yep.
And I was just telling you all the things that had happened in the year, and you were listening, and you said, gosh, I'm so proud of you. And that really struck me because I don't know that I've heard that a whole lot in life. And I left just going, gosh, that was really pleasant. That was really pleasant. And on the way out...
Yeah, this is where the story where we disagree.
Yeah, we totally disagree on this part. On the way out, I say, you have my number. Please feel free to give me a call whenever you want. So, okay.
You did not say that.
I did say this. And then you get the book, and I don't hear from you for like a week. And I'm like, oh, God. Well, okay, at least it was a nice cup of coffee. I'm starting to think, well, I don't really understand why, God, you wanted me to give him this book. There's like crickets on the other end. And
well, okay.
Let alone you had crickets for a year. I gotcha. I'm just saying it was very like...
Oh, yeah, that week must have been so hard for you. So, okay, so let me tell my side of the story.
Okay.
First of all, you didn't say that. Second of all...
Yes, I did.
Second of all... I read the book in a week. You got to give me a little bit of time and credit here. I had to read the whole book in a week, and it took me a week to get through it, and then I could call you and thank you for the book.
Oh, that's true. What can I say?
But God wasn't ready. The irony of it was it took me a week to read the book, and I call you, and in that week you had gotten really sick.
Yes.
And I call you to thank you for the book, and it was like the roles were reversed. I was the extrovert and you were the introvert, but it was because you were so sick.
I was
that you could barely hold a conversation on the phone, and I didn't know you were sick.
Right.
You didn't have a cold or something. It was more like you were nauseous. Something was happening, but I couldn't hear it in your voice that you were sick. So I just thought, okay, she's just like, whatever, you're welcome.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that you weren't feeling well.
Right. And it probably in your mind was just like, oh, she's unenthused that I'm calling her to thank her.
Yeah. I thought, okay. All right, God. Again, I got to give this up to you.
Yeah. So in my head, I'm like, well, I didn't think I sounded that bad, but, then I didn't hear from you, and I was just like, all right, I guess I just have to put this in the back of my brain. I did what you asked me to do, God.
Yeah, I mean, when God told me, don't you reach out to her until I give you the go-ahead, and he didn't. So at that point, it goes back to crickets again.
Yep.
And we go from 14 months to 18, 19 months at that point, and all of a sudden...
Well, the book comes out. The actual book, Unstoppable,
right.
comes out.
Yep.
So I text you again and say, hey, I'd really like to give you a copy of this book. And you respond, absolutely not. I'm purchasing your book. I
wanted to support you.
I know. You're so sweet. And so do we meet again? No.
No, it was just a conversation over the phone via text message, so on and so forth.
Okay.
Yep. Then the crickets kick in again for a few more months.
And I think I said again, like, you call me anytime. No call. But anyway.
You didn't say it.
Whatever. In the meantime, I am in a career change, and I'm leaving the fitness industry and entering into the fire industry. And everything I had tried for in the Broward County, West Palm area just fell through. And I was devastated. And I had a friend that I went to fire college with. And when I really just surrendered it all to God, because I was so like, I don't understand. I feel like you led me into this industry. I don't get it, but nothing's happening. And a week later, she calls and she says, hey, would you be interested in working at NASA. I was like, well, what?
Like TV NASA?
Like TV NASA.
Like Neil Armstrong NASA?
Yep. And I just thought.
And you have no experience in the fire industry.
No, another God story. My boss is a Christian. So incredibly cool. We'll have to kind of delve into that another time. But I was like, yeah, of course. So within a very short period of time, like my whole life is uprooted, and I'm deciding now I'm going to move from Fort Lauderdale up to the Melbourne area. And as I'm packing up, and this is within like a 2-week period of time. Like,
yeah, this was quick for you.
I mean, I had to put my house on the market. I'm packing up all my belongings, and I say to God, hey, before I leave this side of town, is there anything I need to do in order to, just make right with relationships, friendships? Is there any loose ends that I need to tie up? And there were like 2 or 3 people he asked me in my spirit to connect with, and you were one of them. And I was just like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. I don't want him to find out from Bill that I'm leaving. So, okay, like, I guess that I can do that. And so it is a couple of days prior to me leaving, because it was a Wednesday night at church and I was leaving Saturday morning. And holy moly, like, I knew you would be at church on Wednesday because you consistently were, but it's a massive church. For people who are listening from outside of Florida, like, this church is it's like a shopping mall massive. I'm like, how am I going to find this guy?
The sanctuary seats like 3,500, I think, in Fort Lauderdale. It's big.
It really is. And I wasn't sure if I was making, like, just like you said, am I making this up, or is this really what you want? So I really wasn't sure. So I just decided, well, if it really is like I'm supposed to say goodbye to this guy, then he'll just be there. I don't know how it's going to happen, right? So I pull into the parking lot, and lo and behold, I see your car. And I'm like, oh, I go, okay, he's here. So I walk into church, and I'm like, all right, Lord, whatever you want. And then I see you, like, clear across the church. And I'm like, God, you don't want me to, like, run across the church to go say goodbye to this guy, do you? Can I just go to service first?
Delayed obedience yet again.
Gosh, I am terrible, right? So I go in and do a church service, and I say to myself and to God, okay, if this is really what you want, then I would just assume he would be, like, in close proximity. I can find him. I walk out of the sanctuary, and you are smack in front of me, but you're in the midst of it looks like a very deep prayer with somebody. Heads are bowed. I mean, it looked like you were in, like, spiritual warfare mode. And I'm like, oh, Lord, you don't want me to disturb this guy's prayer. I really didn't know what to do. So I pass by you. I gently touch your arm. I don't say anything. I don't look at you. I just pass by you, touch your arm, and I go, okay, I guess I'll just sit at the bench and wait.
Yeah, just outside. We were in the sanctuary, outside the sanctuary doors. There's some benches outside the actual building, kind of overlooking a little playground.
Yeah, and I'm waiting, and I'm just nervous as all get out.
Why are you what do you have to be nervous about?
Like, what am I going to say to you? I felt like after the book, there was just crickets on your end. So in my mind, do you even care I'm leaving? In my head, that's where I'm at. Okay. So I'm nervous.
Fair enough.
And you walk out, you say, oh, hi, how are you? And I said, oh, I'm good. I feel like God wants me to talk to you. And you go, okay. And so I say, I got this really incredible job opportunity to work for NASA, and I'm leaving on Saturday, and I wanted to make sure I say goodbye to you. I didn't want you to hear it from Bill, and so I just really just want to say, goodbye. And you look at me, and you give me a very neutral and respectful, wow, what a great opportunity. Good for you. Wow.
And again, I'm a processor, so my brain, that little mouse is sitting there running as fast as he can, but it's just not fast enough,
And you give me a side hug. And I was just like, okay.
One of those really awkward,
very awkward side hugs.
Yeah.
You know, that's a church culture thing, right? So I go, okay, well, take care. And I start to walk away. And inside, I am like, what was that about, God? I got a side hug. You wanted me to go to church to find this guy to get a side hug? What is happening here?
Meanwhile, the mouse is still spinning.
Right. And I'm very close to getting to my vehicle. And I hear you like booking it down the hallway. And I'm like, what is that? It's like a scene from like a romantic movie. Like, wait, Deborah. And so I turn around and you're like, wow, I don't want the last thing to hear from me. It's just like, we can't end this way. Like, really, I want you to know I'm really happy for you. And I still love you. And I want nothing but the best for you. And
you said, I love you back.
I did. It just came out of my mouth and I was like, oh my, I said it. And we gave each other a hug.
We did.
Yep. And it was like a very deep hug. I felt like you were on the verge of crying and I thought,
I would never.
Oh, I would never.
No, I would never.
And so I walk out to my car and now
you're even more irritated.
I am. I'm like, what are you doing to me, God? Like, you gave me this job, and all of a sudden, I like confess my love to this man, and I'm leaving. I'm leaving, Lord. I'm leaving on Saturday. What am I supposed to do now?
You should. Yeah. So the conversation on my end, I get out to my car, and I'm sitting in the driver's seat, and I go, same question. What was that about?
Oh, man.
And God goes, step one is complete.
Oh.
And I go, what do you mean step one? I've been at this for over a year and a half. This better be step one of a 2-step process here. What is I'm like, what do you mean step one is complete? What, you're not telling me anything with that.
So you're irritated too.
Yeah. I'm like, what are you doing?
Oh, my goodness. So I get in my vehicle and I drive home, pack up my boxes and bags and head to Melbourne. And I was just like, okay, I don't know what to do now.
So you're 2.5 hours away from me.
Mm-hmm. And when
starting a new life.
Yep. And I'm really preoccupied with learning a new occupation that I have no experience with. So this man hires me to work for NASA. And he's like, I would rather train somebody than to have somebody come in with bad habits. I will teach you everything you need to know. Don't worry. And I was just like, what a blessing from God this man was. But, that first couple of months, the first 2 months, I'm just trying to wrap my brain around this massive career change. And
new city, new friends.
Oh, yeah.
Literally lift and shift.
Yes.
And so on my end, it becomes crickets yet again.
Oh.
Here you go, and you're off, and I'm not hearing anything.
And so I think to myself, boy, I'm starting to think about that conversation. I'm thinking about the fact that I said I love you. And I'm like, well, maybe I just miss him because everything is so unfamiliar to me. Everything is so unfamiliar. Maybe I just need to pause and wait to make sure that I'm not clinging to something that I know is familiar in this unfamiliar.
You understand we could have been married a year earlier if you hadn't had delayed obedience?
Listen, we got married exactly when we were supposed to.
Not for nothing.
Not for nothing.
But all this delayed obedience,
okay.
You're delayed again. Okay.
But you wouldn't want me to just jump, right? I mean, I wanted to be very clear with God. If this is real, then please make sure I don't stop thinking about him, because I want it to be about him and not because I'm in a new environment.
Sure.
And I wound up watching a really cool TED Talk with Brene Brown about vulnerability. Vulnerability being courage. And I was really inspired by this TED Talk. And I decided, okay, I'm just gonna call him. this is it. I am still missing him, and it's not about the move anymore. It's about him. So I give you a call and say, I have the book. I think it was about the book, actually. I had the physical copy of the book. I wanted to give you the Unstoppable book that I had written, not the whole book, but co-authored. And I said, I'm going to be visiting my parents. I'd love to have another cup of coffee. And you said, no, I'd really like to have dinner with you. I'm going to be coming your way. And yeah.
And so I remember. I don't remember what hurricane was coming.
Yes,
you were coming
right.
to Fort. Yeah, you were coming to Fort Lauderdale, and the time that you were going to be in Fort Lauderdale, I was going to be performing in South Carolina, and so I was not going to be in Fort Lauderdale. So we missed each other at that point. But I said, well, maybe the next weekend. I'm not traveling that weekend. Why don't I come up and see you? But the hurricane, there's some hurricane, I don't remember what it was supposed to hit. It never wound up really hitting. It just kind of dissipated out in the Atlantic. But gas was a tremendous shortage. I remember this. All the gas stations in Fort Lauderdale, everybody's panicking. Everybody's buying up all the gas. I'm just sitting there going, again, looking at my gas tank going, I cannot make a 2.5 hour drive. I don't have enough gas to get there. God, if I'm supposed to go up there, you got to open up a gas station somewhere. They all had caution tape up on their pumps and everything else. Yeah. And I just wanted to go get a drink, just a Coke. And I drive up about 5 minutes from where I live to the nearest gas station, and it's late at night. And they had gas.
Wow.
And so I filled up and I said, okay, this is it.
What I also think happened that we didn't include, which is a really cool part of the story, is in between that 2 months, you're like, I'd really love your email at work. Like, it'd be so cool. And
yeah, I wanted to email. I wanted to be able to say I emailed someone from NASA.
Oh, so funny. And you write me this incredible love letter, like, knock my socks off. Like, no matter what happens, I'm for you, Deb. And I want to show you the love of God. And whether we're together or not, I'm for you. And it was the most incredible love letter I have ever received. And sometimes when I'm mad at you, I pull that out. And boy, does that save everything.
Well, I'm glad you saved it then.
I did. It's come in handy a few times, but yeah.
Every other day you pull that thing out.
No. But that was really, I think that sealed the deal for me. Like, why have I been running from someone who wants nothing but the best for me? Like, it was a really remarkable thing to read. And I'd love for you to tell your hand in that writing of the letter.
Yeah, so that was another, again, there's so many God moments in our story.
Mm-hmm.
So you give me your email address, and I said, okay, I've got her email. If I want to write her a letter and tell her how I feel, and she can, read it at her convenience. Mm. And so the day you give it to me, you give it to me one day, and the next day I'm at work and I have your email address. And I'm going, okay, God, again, you told me not to reach out to her unless it was your timing, because otherwise I'd make things worse. And so I said, too many dominoes have fallen for you to not be at complete work at this point.
Yeah.
You're moving, and I'm supposed to be moving with you. So I said, I'm going to write this letter. And it was one of the busiest days I ever had at work. It's one of those things. I work on a website and mobile app and things like that. So everything I do, I can do remotely. And whenever you work remotely, I personally just get a lot more done, because when you're in the office, people stop in your office to see how you are. They have questions. You never get anything done. And that day was no different. It was nonstop. People coming into my office. The interruptions that day were on a level like I've never seen before. And so I'm just not getting it, just not getting an opportunity. So finally it was around lunch break. I never take a lunch break. If I eat lunch, it's going to be a working lunch. And so I shut my office door because a lot of people would go down. We have a restaurant at the church. So a lot of people go down there and so on and so forth. So I shut my door, and I don't know, it takes half hour, whatever it was to write the letter. And the phone is ringing and there's still all sorts of distractions, but I'm pushing them away, right? I'm Heisman trophying everything. The guy on the top of the Heisman trophy, that was me pushing away everyone that was trying to get my attention during my lunch break. And I finally get through the letter and I read it. And it's one of those things where you go, okay, this is a really good letter. That means I didn't write this, God, you wrote this letter.
Mm-hmm.
But I said, once again, I turned to God and I said, God, as badly as I want this, you have the right to veto this. And if you tell me, I will hit that little garbage can icon in the bottom right corner of this email and it will not be sent. And I literally said to God, I'm going to sit here in my office. I don't remember if it was 5 minutes or 15 minutes.
I think you told me it was 15 minutes.
Yeah. I said, I'm going to sit here in my office for 15 minutes and I'm going to sit in my chair and I'm going to do nothing but pray. And if there's no one knocking at the door, no phone ringing, no meeting if there are no interruptions for 15 minutes, because today's been absolute chaos, I'm going to take that as you giving me your blessing to say, yes, you can go ahead and send this email. And so I wait, and the 15 minutes goes by, and I literally get up from the chair and walk behind my computer to go and press send. And the janitor, this super sweet lady, knocks on the door and comes in to get the garbage.
And this is at 16 minutes?
This is like 15 minutes and 10 seconds. This is right at the cusp. And so, of course, I'm trying to be polite to her. And I'm so confused now at this point. And she takes the garbage and gets out of the room. And I immediately go, God, what was that? What was that? You're cutting it awful close there. That was technically over 15 minutes, but I got interrupted. And I just had that still gentle voice that said, Michael, I created the entire universe. I put everything in motion. If I wanted to speed up her day by 30 seconds, you think I couldn't have done that?
Wow.
And that's when I just hit the send button and I said, okay.
That letter changed it all.
But it was all the unsaid. What I said to you earlier about, I had this whole year and a half of unsaid things to you. It was all comprised into that. And so there was a lot going on there. But it was a lot of pressure on my end that was building up. So to get all of that off my chest was amazing. And so, here we are now. We're 3.5 years married and starting a podcast. And you just had, that's a good time to plug. You just had a brand new Devo hit YouVersion.
Yes.
What was the name of the Devo?
Making Marriage Meaningful Through Conflict Resolution.
So that's a mouthful, but if you go on YouVersion and you search through the plans.
Yep. Just type in Making Marriage Meaningful.
Yeah, you will see Deb's. It's a 5-day marriage Devo, I believe.
Yep.
So that is brand new, live on YouVersion. Download that. But
it's all the things I've learned in the 3.5 years being married.
Yeah,
many years
to resolve.
Many years of being just marriage as a whole and understanding how we work together and learning how to best navigate us.
And single people could absolutely read this and use it in your workplace, because you're so good at reading me and understanding when is a good time to talk, when is not, what's the tone, all of those things. Because if I'm frustrated with work or if I'm having a bad day or this, that, and the other, you are very good at biting your tongue and waiting until I'm in a place where I would be receptive to what you have to say, and then you state your case. And that's a wonderful thing in our marriage, but that's something I even need to work on work relationships and so on and so forth. So it is categorized as a marriage Devo.
But I do think people can learn a lot from just the conflict
Absolutely.
resolution, because we have that in every relationship.
Yeah. So that's even, I think I can even put the link to that Devo plan in the
Yeah, that
notes.
would be great.
But yeah, we've had a beautiful 3.5-year marriage and still going strong. And
we got married during COVID.
we did.
Yep.
We did. We
At
absolutely,
Pastor Bill's pool. Just
yeah.
him, his wife, a witness, and us.
Yeah, we were supposed to have a whole ceremony, and then
Yep.
COVID broke out, and we weren't sure if we were going to be able to get married, but we had closed on the house, and we couldn't not get married. So we were like, "Hey, Bill, we've done all the premarital, we've done financial piece, we've checked all the boxes. Do you care if we just come on over about 6-8 weeks early and we'll just
Yeah.
get hitched on your back porch for now,
Yeah.
and then once COVID passes, we'll have everyone back over."
Yep.
And do it in front of everyone else.
Yep.
And there's more stories there for another day. But this was what's so amazing about our story is there's just so many twists and turns, and it really is why we have this podcast called Detours. Is
Absolutely.
there are good detours, there are bad detours, but the most important thing for you and I in our relationship is we did it God's way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do believe he's going to, give us favor. I hope that we continue to honor him. And even before the podcast, that's what you and I prayed, that through our story, God gets the honor and the glory, because
he deserves it.
Oh my goodness. That was not your average love story.
No.
There were too many moments where
it was absolutely the
God
intervention
ordained
of God, for sure.
Absolutely. So, guys, we hope you enjoyed this first season. Now, second season, we've already got it slated. You're going to get introduced to my father. I am flying him down from Chicago down here to Florida. Season 1, we've had a little bit of feedback saying season 1 kind of focused and people are getting to know you. So season 2, people are going to get to know a little bit more about me, and we're going to have my dad here as a guest the entire season. I love apologetics. I absolutely adore studying and reading apologetics.
Can you tell people what that is?
Yeah, apologetics is being able to defend your faith. So if you think from a Christian perspective, evangelism is you're on the offense, apologetics is you're on the defense.
Okay.
So, there's a lot of conversation around evolution and Big Bang Theory and all sorts of amazing things. And the most common question in apologetics is, if God is so good, why do bad things happen to good people? And so what we're going to do for season 2 is we're flying my dad down, and we're going to look at that question through the lens of my little brother dying. If God is so good, how could he take a child? Stuart was the name of my brother, and he lived to 9 months old, born with a heart defect. And people can answer if God is so good, why do bad things happen to good people? They can answer from a lot of perspectives, but where I feel most conversations fall short is when a mother whose child is dying of cancer asks that question.
Right.
You better not give them the answer that you saw Frank Turek give, or Ravi before he fell. You better not give. You got to have the right answer there, and there's lots of perspective on that question. But if you give an answer that says anything that has to do with the fall of Adam and Eve, that's going to fall on deaf ears to a mother whose child is dying. And so we're literally going to spend the entire second season with my dad going through, obviously, very first few episodes. We're going to just tell the story, the testimony of Stuart and his life and his death and how my parents handled it. And now we are coming up almost on 40 years later
Wow.
from his passing. And if God is so good, why do bad things happen to good people? We want to just share some perspective from a family where it didn't end well, where Stuart did die.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there groping for answers. And you're sitting there going, God, if you're supposed to be so good, how could you take this innocent child? And you're so fixated on that pain. And we're going to spend an entire season recounting that pain.
Yep.
And giving our perspective on, God took Stuart, and he's absolutely good. And he knew exactly what he was doing. And it when you lose a child, it fundamentally changes the DNA of your family. And God is still good.
Amen.
And we're gonna go to probably some pretty dark, sad places in season 2. But it's, again, I think people need to hear it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a topic that needs to be addressed from that angle of God's goodness. And we're really trying to just hit those topics that people don't always want to talk about.
And this
or
is,
don't know how to talk about.
That's just it. If you haven't lost a child, you don't know how to answer that question necessarily.
Right.
It really does take someone that's gone down that path and is so far enough removed from the situation
True.
that they can have a more godly perspective on that. Because you can really make some assumptions. You can, so many times you're halfway through the story and you judge that as if it's the ending.
Yeah, I think we do that with a lot of stories
so
in
many
life.
times. And so we're going to spend a lot of time in season 2 going, hey, this isn't the end of the story. There's a lot of pain.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have some really dark moments. You're going to have glimpses of light, and God is going to lead you out of that darkness, but you got to latch on to him and ask him to lead you.
Yeah.
So that's what we have to look forward to for season 2.
Yeah.
So we hope that you guys join us.
Thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you guys so much for being here with us with our crazy story of getting together, and we hope you're enjoying the podcast. You can check out our website, detours.life. If you go there, we have links to all the different platforms. We're on Spotify, we're on iTunes, we're on all Google
Apple.
Play, Apple, all that. We're everywhere. If you just go to detours.life and click on the menu, we have links to all of that. But please share this podcast on your social media. Get the word out there, especially with season 2. That is the number one question that people have when they're questioning whether or not the Bible is real, God is real, so on and so forth. And we really are going to put a lot of time and effort into answering that. And if there's anyone that would be blessed by that or having struggles with that question,
send it along.
Please get ready to send that along because we're going to spend a lot of time diving into that. But it's been so much fun.
It has.
This is a blessing.
It's
for
never
us
a
to be
dull
able to do it.
moment.
Yeah, and, it's always a blessing to be able to do this with you, with my wife. I never would have dreamed something like this.
Me too. What a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you guys so much.
Yep. Thank you for your support. We appreciate you. Thank you for listening to season 1.
Yes, and we will be putting out more information, some teasers and things like that on season 2. That will be coming your way shortly, so keep an eye out for that. But until next time, guys, thank you so much for season 1. It's been fun.
Yep. Season
2 is on the horizon, and it won't be long, so stick around.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Detours. For more content, you can find us on Spirit FM Radio, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Play, or on our website at detours.life. To view my writings or to contact me for public speaking engagements, visit my website at debmarsalisi.com.